Hey folks, it's Ray at DCRainmaker.com, and today I've got 16 things to know about the new GoPro Hero 10 Black. Now, I've been using this camera over the last month a ton, so I've got a pretty good feel for how it works, where it works well, where it doesn't work so well, all the caveats, all that kind of goodness. And because this video is definitely not sponsored in any way, shape, or form, I'm going to tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly, but I'm going to do it through real-world usage and tons of comparison footage and actual real footage over the past month to show you how it stacks up against the Hero 9, as well as their competitors from DJI and Insta360. Now, before we get into all those 16 new features, let's simply talk price. The price has actually increased by $50. It is now at $399 as opposed to $349. However, that's with the GoPro subscription service. If you don't have that or don't sign up for that, then it's $100 more at $499 as opposed to last year with the Hero 9 at $449. Also, a fun fact, in case you're wondering how to tell a Hero 10 apart from a Hero 9, it's simple. The blue text, the blue Hero 10 on the side as well as the blue text in the front means it's a Hero 10. So first up on the list is the increased frame rates. So in a nutshell, everything's kind of doubled. So essentially like 5K 30 before, so 30 frames per second at 5K became 5K 60. 4K 60 before became 4K 120. 2.7K 120 became 2.7K 240. However, it didn't quite go all the way to 480. GoPro says they're not quite capable yet in terms of software where they are on this chipset, maybe down the road, but not today. Now, just a quick note before we go too much further, if you are finding this video interesting or useful, simply whack that like button at the bottom there. It really helps out this video and the channel quite a bit. Speaking of that chipset, that's probably the biggest technical change with the Hero 10 Black. It's now got their new GP2 silicone. Essentially, GoPro developed their own silicone back a few years ago, the GP1 chipset, and they've carried that through to the Hero 9, but GoPro says that they basically started to outgrow the capabilities of that chipset. Whereas the new GP2 chipset allows them higher frame rates, faster responsiveness, and a boatload more things we'll talk about throughout this video. GoPro also says that GP2 chipset should last them a few years, so they're going to grow into that over time, both with increases to hardware and new cameras with their annual release cycle, as well as firmware updates, including one coming in just in November that will add some additional frame rates too. Next up is a pretty big change to photo modes, which is the increased resolution to 23.6 megapixel for all photo modes. Previously, you only got that if you shot RAW, which had a bunch of kind of considerations you had to think about, versus now you can shoot in basically everything except for live burst. And live burst is like live photos on iOS or motion stills on Android. So those are really actually more just videos than they are true photos. You can see a couple shots here side by side between the Hero 9 and the Hero 10 taking those photos. I've also put a link to a bunch of this stuff in the description down below if you want to download the actual files themselves, both RAW and JPEG, to see how they look. Now, at this point in the video, if things are feeling a little bit fast-paced for you, then definitely check out my full beginner's guide video. It's linked up in the corner there somewhere, and that basically takes you from the unboxing all the way through setup and then full usage of the Hero 10, essentially starting off with a bunch of the basics and then ramping into a bunch of the tips and tricks from someone that uses a GoPro every single day, and also someone that has used the Hero 10. I figure there's a bunch of little things that you might find useful. Next up is a change that will make a lot of beach folks happy, which is a new hydrophobic coating on the lens itself. Now, if you used a GoPro for a long time, you know that the best way to ensure that droplets don't form on the lens is to just simply lick it. And then as you're taking your camera in and out of the water droplets won't form on the lens. But with the Hero 10, they put a hydrophobic coating on it, which means that the water droplets should just run off. And thus far in my testing, it holds pretty true. Like, water does not stick to it. I'm pretty happy with it. Now, one funny note though is GoPro says, please don't lick the Hero 10 lens. In fact, if you lick the Hero 10 lens, it does the opposite and removes that coating. The good news is if you do have a Hero 9, the lens covers between the 9 and the 10 are completely interchangeable, so you can actually buy the 10 lens cover by itself, put it on the 9, and gain all those same benefits. The next feature is arguably my favorite feature on the Hero 10, which is wired downloads. That means that you can take a cable from the GoPro Hero 10 straight to your phone and download the videos and photos at full speed, as opposed to having to deal with wireless. I have found that incredibly useful getting a boatload of footage at the end of the day, or just even sifting through a boatload of footage and not having to deal with like Wi-Fi stuff. It just works every single time, and it's so fast. So we met to GoPro to ask whether or not this functionality is coming to the Hero 9, and the answer is yes, it actually is. In fact, today, right this second, if you download the new GoPro Quick app, it'll work with the Hero 9 to download from USB via USB. You can see that right here working just fine with the new GoPro Quick app. There's no firmware update required. It actually uses the existing firmware, just opens up new stuff with the GoPro app itself. Now, setting up that wire connectivity is actually pretty easy, but you will need an additional cable than what came in the box. So if you've got an Apple device with a Lightning port, then you will need the Lightning to USB camera connector. GoPro recommends using the official one. It's only like 12 or 15 bucks, so I'd go with that. It worked just fine for me. And then you take the USB cable that came in the box, plug those two things together, and attach it to the phone, and within a couple seconds, it'll show all your footage right there. On Android, you need a simple USB-C to USB-C connector. Take one end, plug it in the GoPro, the other end, plug it in the phone, and you're good to go there as well. I've got links to both of those cables, by the way, down in the description, just in case you want to be sure that you got the exact correct cable. Next up is that GoPro has enabled Hypersmooth in live streaming. Previously, there was like electronic stabilization for live streaming, both the Hero 8 and Hero 9, but it was super old, like 4 camera versions old. So it didn't really stabilize at all, which means that people watching your stream were probably getting a bit motion sickness. Now they're using the full Hypersmooth 4.0 stack for the live stream side, which means that both the streamed video as well as the recorded video have the complete stabilization in it. Next, while I talked about the new wired feature, there's also improved wireless features as well. GoPro's claiming 30% faster, and that's of course super useful, given you probably just doubled all your frame rates up to 60 or 120 frames or 240 frames per second, which effectively doubles your file size. Now, I hinted at the next feature a little bit earlier, which is the new Hypersmooth 4.0. Hypersmooth is basically GoPro's branding for their stabilization side of it, and 4.0 implying this is the 4th generation of it. The biggest ticket item in this is that they've removed some of the barriers, especially around the horizon leveling. Horizon leveling means that when I hold up the camera like this and tilt it like this, it'll keep actually the image straight and stable, so it looks like it's completely level to you. In the past, for some of those modes, it support up to 45 degrees of tilt, yet other modes only support about 27 degrees of tilt. GoPro says that in the Hero 10, they now go to 45 degrees of tilt for every single mode in the camera. Now, while horizon leveling is super cool for a lot of scenarios, there are some cases where I don't prefer. For example, mountain biking, horizon leveling just takes out the motion of it and just doesn't make it feel as good. But of course, you can choose whether to enable or disable it. It's always an option on the camera, so it's there if you need it, and then you can disable it when you don't want it. Now, as you're probably figuring out by now, almost all these new features have to do with speed or responsiveness, and almost everything's tied back to the new GP2 chip. And that's true as well for the next new feature, which is improved responsiveness of the back touchscreen itself. Now, in using these cameras side by side over the last month for comparison footage, it became super obvious that the Hero 10 is definitely faster on the back touchscreen than the Hero 9. Almost every single time I went to use it side by side, I'd be waiting on the Hero 9 versus the Hero 10 was like, yep, I'm done, ready to go. So some of the features like the improved touchscreen aren't really about things like frame rates and crazy new features, but just about making the core stuff work a lot better. Next is new local tone mapping in videos and 3D noise reduction. Previously, GoPro did local tone mapping in their super photo mode, but actually not on the video side. And what this means is that basically when you get high contrast or high brightness levels and low brightness levels in the same frame, it can figure out which portions of the frame should be exposed at different levels. A really simple example of showing this side by side with the Hero 9 is I'm going through this treed section on this hike, and you can see there are super bright areas like this glacier up above on the mountain, as well as really dark areas like the trees and the shrubs down below. And as I move the camera around, you can see how the Hero 10 handles that just a little bit better than the Hero 9 does. GoPro says that's exaggerated even more in low light conditions, where you still may have a bright sun or bright object up there, and then it's really dark in a lot of the rest of the frame, like at sunset or things like that. Next up is another simple responsiveness one, which is improved frame rates on the front screen itself. Now, you may remember with the Hero 9, when they introduced the front screen after copying the DJI Osmo Action, it was super slow and latent at higher frame rates. So if you had 4K or 5K recorded, what you actually saw on the front screen, the one that you look at itself, was a really low frame rate, only like 3 to 5 frames per second. So it's kind of hard to use it sometimes because it just seemed like watching bad internet TV or something. Versus with the Hero 10, GoPro says it'll match the recorded frame rate, and that's true. It looks completely buttery smooth in the Hero 10 compared to side by side with the Hero 9. And while many folks might think of the front screen for vloggers and such, it's honestly just super useful for taking selfies and ensuring that you're actually in the frame. And then you gotta spin it back around again, still see the back of the display whenever you want it, and then bring it back to selfie style without pressing any buttons at all. Next, GoPro has increased the resolution for frames grabbed from a video, meaning if you're taking a still from a video, it's up to 19.6 megapixels now, versus previously it was at 12 to 14 megapixels. GoPro says that's because they're finding more and more people are just simply taking videos of things and then taking the stills out of them as opposed to taking true photos. And I actually find that true myself. These days, with the resolution of the video being as high as it is and the frame rates being as high as they are, it's just way easier to simply take a video of something and then grab the exact still, the exact frame that I want, as opposed to trying to capture that moment by pressing the button and getting the photo, missing the photo, and all that kind of fun stuff. So for me, that's a feature I really appreciate. Now, one minor caveat on that though is that's not supported for GoPro's Live Burst, which is like their live photo thing that I talked about earlier, because again, that's just taking a video of something, it's not actually taking photos of it. Okay, so rounding home here with 3 more categories to go, we've got low light performance, or rather reduced noise in low light performance. So increased performance and low light performance. GoPro says in particular they focused on 4K 30 and 4K 24 here in reducing the noise in that. They didn't know it's not for like pitch black max scenarios, I think most action cameras, GoPros included, it's fair to say mostly suck there. But in terms of low light performance, you can see just a couple samples here side by side between the Hero 9 and the Hero 10, as well as the Osmo Action and the Insta360 One R. Speaking of those samples, I've got entire samples video of comparison footage linked up there somewhere. You should be able to find that and dig into all sorts of samples across all sorts of scenarios to see how the cameras perform both against the existing Hero 9 as well as other competitors on the market. So about now you may be asking, what about the mods? And GoPro says the Hero 10 supports all the mods. Mostly. So in this case, it starts off, the media mod is supported out of the box today. The light mod is supported out of the box today because it doesn't technically do anything with the camera, it just sits on top of it. However, the GoPro Max Lens mod though is not supported out of the box, but will instead come via firmware update in November. That's a pretty big disappointment for me personally because I use the Max Lens mod for almost everything these days. It's just so stable and so easy to use, but still I guess I can wait like 2 more months to get to November. GoPro says the reason for that is with the new GP2 chipset, they've had to rework a ton of code behind the scenes, and they simply haven't yet got the Max Lens mod to the point where they want it to be on the Hero 10. Which brings up the question of, will GoPro unlock higher frame rates on the Max Lens mod for the Hero 10? The answer to that is, stay tuned for later on this year. Okay, so for this last item here, I've got an entire bucket list of like odds and ends. Things I probably could have made this like a 20 new things to know video, but instead I'm just gonna grab my phone and rip through them. Number one, physical battery remains the same as the Hero 9. Packaging wise, it's the same as the Hero 9 also, except they've removed the plastic hang tag, which makes it even more environmentally friendly. With the Hero 9 packaging, the package was actually like the soft shell case itself, and then just cardboard and fully recycled, so they got rid of the plastic, and now it's more friendly. Everything else beyond that remains essentially the same. All the new features we saw last year are here as well, and that's also true for some of the quirks. For example, if you're using your phone to preview the video, you've got this mounted somewhere, once you hit record, you can't see the preview stream anymore, and while GoPro won't comment on why that got removed from the Hero 9 and Hero 10 and compared to past cameras, the grapevine is pretty strong in saying that's a patent court case thing that's still ongoing. And finally, it's worthwhile noting that GoPro says in November they're going to add a new firmware update that will go ahead and increase the capabilities of this from a frame rate standpoint, so stay tuned for that as well. Okay, so there you go, a complete look at the new GoPro Hero 10. I mean, clearly it's the best GoPro yet, but I mean, you'd hope so, right? You'd hope that the cameras get better and better, not worse. And thus far, I have not seen any like showstoppers on this camera and using it for a month and putting us through its paces. It's essentially the Hero 9 with some added features. Some features that are more marketing focused, like, higher frame rates, and some features just more practical, like a improved touchscreen in the back and the wired offloads, which is by far my favorite feature, like I said before. With that, thanks for watching. If you found this video useful or interesting, go ahead and whack that like button at the bottom there, or hit subscribe for plenty more sports technology goodness. I think it's going to be a pretty good fall. And just in case you're wondering, no, this is not a green screen. This is real life. This is Switzerland. It's pretty awesome. With that, have a good one.